What's up, everyone? Tony from the Cold Case Project, back again. And today, what I want to run with you over is all content shared in these videos is readily available in any Google search. Now, with that said, I take this content, have it rewritten, and upon rewriting it, put it in these videos to spread the word on the thousands and thousands of cold cases of men and women throughout the United States that are just forgotten, and I give this platform to them so their cases and their stories can be told. Now, in addition to that, if you look down below in the description, you're going to see some brand new t-shirt and coffee cup designs I've actually gotten from a couple of my subscribers who have over the years have been giving me some awesome fan art. So with that said, I'm offering a 20% discount code down below if you check that out, and splitting proceeds with them because they are awesome. Been watching me for quite some time, and I definitely think they deserve to be rewarded for some of the work they do on top of being full-time employees also. So once again, if you have any recommendations or any suggestions, comment down below. Thank you so much for watching. Enjoy the video. Like, subscribe. I'm out. Peace.
On the frigid night of December 28th, 1985, 25-year-old Stephen Bunch left his hometown of Covington, Kentucky, for a night out at January's, a nightclub in nearby Cincinnati, Ohio. With the holiday season still lingering in the air, the city was alive with the pulse of nightlife, music, and celebration. Bunch, a local auto body shop owner, had every reason to look forward to the evening, a chance to unwind, share a few drinks, and temporarily escape the daily grind. The night went as expected until around 2 a.m. when Bunch decided to leave the club. As he walked to his car in the parking lot, he was met with an unwelcome surprise. The vehicle wouldn't start. It wasn't his own car. Bunch had been using a rental after a friend borrowed his vehicle without permission and wrecked it. Now stranded in the cold Cincinnati night, he was left with no choice but to find another way home. A female friend offered him a ride back to Covington. As they drove, she noticed something peculiar about Bunch's demeanor. He seemed anxious, his eyes constantly flickering to the rearview mirror, his fingers tapping with nervous energy. It was only when a police car that had been following them turned down another street that he finally seemed to relax. Even so, something was clearly bothering him, though he never revealed what. Arriving at his parents' house on Warren Street, where he still lived, Bunch stepped inside. His mother and father were awake, waiting for him as they often did when he was out late. He was only in his bedroom for about 5 minutes before stepping out and telling his mother that someone was coming to pick him up. He didn't say who. He didn't say where he was going. Then he walked out the door. His father, sensing something was amiss, instinctively followed. Watching from the doorway, he saw Stephen walk out into the backyard, disappearing into the darkness. It was the last time anyone in his family would ever see him. By the next morning, when Stephen hadn't returned home, his family grew concerned. Calls to his friends yielded nothing. No one knew where he was or who he had planned to meet that night. As the hours stretched into days, worry turned into panic. Stephen was not the type to disappear without a word. Something was wrong. His family took it upon themselves to search for him. Scouring the wooded area near their home, they found one clue: the scarf Stephen had worn the night he vanished. The discovery raised even more questions. Why had his scarf been discarded there? Had he been forced into a vehicle? Had he run into trouble right in his own neighborhood? Adding to the mystery, Stephen's rental car, which had been left inoperable in the nightclub's parking lot, somehow turned up several blocks away from the club. Who had moved it? Why? If Stephen had gone missing shortly after returning home, who had driven the car after he was last seen? Stephen's disappearance came at a precarious time in his life. He owned and operated Bunch's Auto Body in the Mainstrasse area, a neighborhood known for its nightlife, but also rumored to have ties to organized crime activity. Some whispered that Stephen had gotten involved in something he shouldn't have, possibly a bad business deal or a dangerous acquaintance. Another theory emerged from the shadows of the justice system. Stephen had recently testified in a criminal case. Although details about the case remain vague, it led some to believe that he had either been silenced for what he knew or placed into the federal witness protection program for his safety. If the latter were true, it would explain why his body was never found, why there were no further leads, and why his trail went cold so quickly. Yet, the witness protection theory has never been confirmed. His family remained skeptical. If he had willingly entered the program, why hadn't he contacted them, even secretly? Why had he left behind everything, his livelihood, his family, and his life without a single goodbye? Stephen's father passed away in 1990, never knowing what happened to his son. His mother, who later remarried, still clung to the hope that one day she would have answers. Decades have passed, but the pain of uncertainty has not faded. The case remains unsolved, the questions unanswered. Did Stephen Bunch disappear willingly, forced into a new life by circumstances beyond his control? Or did something far more sinister happen that night in 1985? For now, his story lingers as one of Kentucky's enduring mysteries. On the afternoon of October 10, 2002, a devastating car accident changed the trajectory of multiple lives in Eddyville, Kentucky. One of the victims, a young child, lay in critical condition at the hospital. Family members gathered, anxiously awaiting updates. But one person never arrived, Sonia Bradley, the child's mother. It was at that moment that her loved ones realized she was missing. Sonia, a 38-year-old mother of three, had last been seen at 12:30 p.m. by her boyfriend, William David West. She vanished without a trace, leaving behind not only her possessions, but also a haunting void in the lives of her family. For more than 2 decades, the mystery surrounding her disappearance has persisted, riddled with suspicions, unanswered questions, and an enduring fight for justice. Before her disappearance, Sonia Bradley had endured significant personal struggles. She was facing financial hardship, largely due to mounting medical bills. A few months before she went missing, she lost her home and most of her furniture. Despite these difficulties, she was determined to rebuild her life. She had applied for disability benefits, hoping to stabilize her finances and provide for her children. The approval for her disability payments came, but tragically, it was after she had disappeared. When family members and investigators searched Sonia's apartment, they found a puzzling scene. Her purse, cigarettes, clothing, and crucially, her medication remained untouched. For someone battling health issues, it was implausible that she would have left voluntarily without taking her essential medications. Her loved ones were adamant. Sonia would never abandon her children or disappear on her own. There was, however, one oddity. A large comforter was missing from her bed. Suspicion soon fell on William David West, Sonia's boyfriend and the last known person to have seen her. When Sonia's mother visited her apartment looking for her daughter, West refused to let her inside and reportedly cursed at her. His behavior raised red flags. Adding to the suspicion, West had a checkered past involving criminal activities. Not long after Sonia's disappearance, he was arrested and sentenced for drug trafficking. Yet, despite these concerns, authorities never charged him with involvement in Sonia's case. 10 years later, in 2012, West found himself in legal trouble again, this time charged with murder. The case, however, never went to trial. A grand jury declined to indict him, and prosecutors later reduced the charges to evidence tampering and possession of a handgun by a felon. They concluded that West had acted in self-defense. To Sonia's family, this was another blow. They had long suspected him of involvement in her disappearance, and his brush with the law only fueled their belief that he was capable of violence. But without evidence, law enforcement was left without the means to arrest him in connection with Sonia's case. For more than 20 years, Sonia Bradley's loved ones have fought to keep her case alive. They have pushed for answers, hoping that someone, somewhere, holds the missing piece to the puzzle. The missing comforter, the suspicious behavior of her boyfriend, the financial struggles, all of these factors add layers to a mystery that refuses to fade. As of April 2025, his body still hasn't been found. Jeffrey Apke was a 28-year-old man who lived with his parents in Florence, Kentucky, in the year 2000. Described by friends and family as a generally upbeat and resilient individual, Jeffrey had faced some difficulties in recent years, but he was determined to turn his life around. After a drunk driving conviction in 1998, he had lost his driver's license, but by March 2000, his driving privileges had been reinstated. Additionally, he had been cited for writing bad checks in 1997, but had made full restitution by April 2000. Despite these setbacks, Jeffrey remained hopeful about his future. He had just secured a new job as a garage door installer, a sign that he was serious about making positive changes. He even told his family he intended to quit smoking cigarettes. However, one challenge he faced that year was the end of his 3-year relationship with his girlfriend in early March. While breakups can be difficult, his loved ones insisted that Jeffrey was not the type of person who would let such an event send him into despair. On the evening of April 7th, 2000, Jeffrey had dinner with his parents at their home. As they ate together, he was in good spirits and shared his plans for the future. After dinner, he told them he was going out to meet friends to play pool, but would return home by 10 p.m. because he had work the next morning. However, as the night went on, Jeffrey's plans changed. He called home twice that evening, the last time being around 11 p.m. He informed his mother that he would be later than expected, but did not give details about what was keeping him out. His parents did not think much of it at the time, as it was not unusual for Jeffrey to stay out late without warning. But as the night turned into morning and he still had not returned, concern began to creep in. It wasn't until April 9th, when Jeffrey failed to show up for work, that alarm bells truly started ringing. His employer called his parents to inform them that Jeffrey had never reported for his scheduled shift. At this point, his family realized something was wrong. Investigators later determined that Jeffrey had been at Strasse House, a bar on Main Street in Covington, Kentucky, on the evening of April 9th. He was reportedly celebrating the reinstatement of his driver's license. Witnesses, including his former girlfriend, saw him drinking heavily that night. Some accounts suggested that he may have also taken Valium, a prescription tranquilizer, alongside his alcohol. As the night wore on, Jeffrey was last seen leaving the bar at approximately 2:30 a.m. on April 10th, closing time. He left alone, driving his grandmother's silver 1974 Chrysler Newport. That was the last time anyone saw him. Less than an hour later, at approximately 3:20 a.m., authorities discovered the Chrysler Newport wrecked and abandoned in Boone County, Kentucky. The crash site was on an Interstate 275 bridge heading toward Indiana. The car was badly damaged, but there was no trace of Jeffrey. The location of the crash was particularly concerning. The bridge had a high drop-off into the water below. While some feared that Jeffrey may have fallen or jumped, there was no clear evidence to support this theory. His family, as well as a private investigator they hired, saw no signs leading up to his disappearance that suggested he was suicidal. Authorities scoured the area surrounding the bridge for any clues, but the search turned up nothing, no footprints, no signs of a struggle, no clues indicating what had happened after the crash. However, a passing motorist later provided a potential lead. The witness claimed to have seen the driver of the wrecked Chrysler Newport exit the vehicle and get into a Jeep Cherokee parked on the roadside. Investigators have been left with more questions than answers in Jeffrey Apke's case. Several theories have been proposed over the years, but none have been confirmed. One possibility is that Jeffrey left voluntarily. Given that he had been drinking heavily and possibly mixing alcohol with Valium, he might have panicked after the crash. Perhaps he feared legal trouble due to his past DUI conviction and decided to flee the scene rather than face the consequences. The Jeep Cherokee spotted at the crash site adds another layer of mystery. Was Jeffrey picked up by a friend or a stranger? If so, where did they take him? And why did he never make contact with his family again? Another possibility is that Jeffrey met with foul play. While no concrete evidence supports this theory, it cannot be ruled out. If he had indeed been under the influence of drugs and alcohol, he may have been vulnerable to someone with bad intentions. Could he have gotten into the wrong vehicle? Could someone have taken advantage of his impaired state? His family's private investigator has expressed skepticism that Jeffrey would simply abandon his life and disappear. Those who knew him insisted that he had been planning for a fresh start and had every reason to look forward to the future. He had a new job, was making positive changes, and had not given any indication that he would willingly walk away from his life. Another puzzling detail in Jeffrey's disappearance is that he never collected his final paycheck from his previous employer. If he had run away to start a new life, why would he leave money behind? Furthermore, his background as a cook in restaurants meant he had a readily employable skill. If he had left to begin anew somewhere else, it's strange that no one has reported any sightings of him over the past 2 decades. Today, Jeffrey Apke's case remains open but inactive. His parents and loved ones have spent years searching for answers, but closure has remained elusive. His family continues to hope that someone, somewhere, holds the missing piece of information that could finally explain what happened on that April night in 2000. For now, Jeffrey Apke remains listed as a missing person, and his story lingers as one of Kentucky's enduring mysteries. Whether he met with foul play, suffered an accident, or chose to disappear, his fate remains unknown. His family still holds on a hope that someday they will learn the truth about what happened that night and finally bring Jeffrey home. If you have any information about Jeffrey Apke's disappearance, please contact the Boone County Sheriff's Office or the Kentucky State Police. The summer of 1986 brought many changes across the United States, new technology, cultural shifts, and significant historical moments. However, for the small city of Owensboro, Kentucky, that summer would forever be marked by the eerie disappearances of 2 teenagers, Shannon Green and David Dwayne Bell. Their cases, still unsolved nearly 4 decades later, remain some of the most perplexing mysteries in Kentucky's history. 16-year-old Shannon Green vanished on July 6, 1986, while walking from her home at 907 West 2nd Street to visit a family friend, John Renaer, at 1430 Haynes Avenue. It was a route she had taken before, a straightforward 2-mile walk. But Shannon never arrived at her destination, and she was never seen again. 5 days later, 18-year-old David Dwayne Bell disappeared under equally baffling circumstances. He was last seen by his father, David Lee Bell, on July 11, 1986. According to David, Dwayne had borrowed $80 from him and rode off on his bicycle, but that bicycle was later found abandoned near an alley behind Dwayne's sister's house. For both teenagers, their disappearances raised more questions than answers. 2 days after Shannon vanished, her mother, Lois Green, received a cryptic phone call from a man identifying himself as Dwayne. The caller claimed that he and Shannon had run away to get married before abruptly hanging up. Lois was skeptical. The only Dwayne she knew was Shannon's friend, David Dwayne Bell. Investigators now believe the call was a deliberate attempt to mislead the investigation, making it seem as though Shannon had willingly left town when in reality she may have met a far more sinister fate. Shannon and Dwayne were not the only ones to vanish in Owensboro in 1986. On June 17th, 23-year-old Mary Ethel Dickens, known as Angie, also disappeared. She was last seen speaking with 2 men outside the Owensboro Motor Inn. On October 2nd, 1986, her badly decomposed body was discovered in a cornfield just outside the city. Some believe there is a direct link between these 3 cases. Online investigators have speculated that Angie may have known something about Shannon's disappearance or that she was targeted by the same perpetrator. While no definitive proof exists, the timing and circumstances of all 3 cases are disturbingly similar. From the very beginning, police suspected that John Renaer, the man Shannon was walking to visit, might be involved in her disappearance. Renaer had a criminal record that included violent offenses, and his house was known as a hangout for local teens. However, Renaer denied having anything to do with Shannon's vanishing. Years later, Renee came forward with a shocking claim. He alleged that Dwayne Bell had confessed to killing Shannon in a recorded conversation. According to Renee, he turned the recording over to the police, but it was either misplaced or ignored for nearly 20 years. When it was finally rediscovered in police archives in the early 2000s, it reignited interest in the case. In the recorded conversation, Dwayne allegedly told Renee that he had hurt Shannon badly and that his father had helped him dispose of her body in a cornfield. He also allegedly admitted to being involved in Angie Dickens' death, as well as the murders of an unidentified woman and a child. Renee later passed a polygraph test about his knowledge of the case, but his credibility remains a point of debate. Some believe he was telling the truth, while others think he fabricated the story to divert attention away from himself. David Lee Bell, Dwayne's father, has always maintained his innocence. He dismissed Renee's claims and insisted that his son had nothing to do with Shannon's disappearance or any other crimes. However, police found inconsistencies in David's statements about Dwayne's disappearance. His claim that Dwayne rode off on his bicycle did not match the fact that the bicycle was later found leaning against a fence. Additionally, some believe that David may have had knowledge of or even participated in Shannon's disappearance and that he silenced Dwayne to prevent him from talking. David Bell relocated to Tucson, Arizona, shortly after his son vanished, raising further suspicions. His abrupt departure led many to wonder if he was fleeing from something. Despite a renewed investigation in the early 2000s, authorities have been unable to uncover concrete evidence linking any of the key suspects to Shannon or Dwayne's disappearances. Searches were conducted in the fields where Renee claimed Dwayne had buried Shannon, but nothing was found. David Bell passed away in 2015, taking any secrets he may have had with him. Dwayne remains missing, and no arrests have ever been made in connection with these cases. Did Dwayne Bell kill Shannon Green? If Renee's tape is real and accurate, it suggests that Dwayne confessed to the crime. However, without physical evidence, this remains speculation. Did David Bell silence his own son? If Dwayne truly knew what happened to Shannon, he may have been seen as a liability. Was he eliminated to ensure his silence? Was John Renee actually involved? While Renee passed a lie detector test, he had a history of violence. Could he have been the true culprit, using Dwayne's disappearance as a convenient distraction? How does Angie Dickens' murder fit in? Was she targeted because she knew too much, or was her murder unrelated? For nearly 4 decades, Shannon Green and David Dwayne Bell's families have waited for answers. The lack of evidence, the missing police recording, and the conflicting account from key figures have left this case in a perpetual state of uncertainty. If you have any information about the disappearance of Shannon Green or David Dwayne Bell, please contact the Owensboro Police Department at 270-687-8888. The truth is still out there, waiting to be uncovered. EARLYBIRD was last seen walking her beloved Pomeranian dog along Laurel Ridge Road in rural Mammoth Cave, Kentucky, on the afternoon of April 12, 1996. The area was sparsely populated, consisting mostly of vacation homes with only 2 permanent neighbors. Around 2 p.m., Barrick had a brief conversation with one of those neighbors. She seemed in good spirits, discussing the mild spring weather and her plans to tend to her rose garden later in the day. That was the last confirmed sighting of her. For the next 3 days, there was no sign of Barrick. It was her routine to take her dog for a walk twice daily, and her neighbors quickly noticed the absence of her presence. When one of them realized she had not been out at all, they grew concerned and contacted authorities on April 15th. When the police arrived at Barrick's home, they found the lights turned off and the doors locked. A quick survey of the property revealed no immediate signs of a break-in, but something was clearly amiss. Inside, the living room appeared disturbed. Her sofa was pushed askew, and there were small but noticeable bloodstains on the carpet. A more detailed search of the house revealed further signs of a struggle. In her bedroom, the fitted sheet was missing from the bed, and the remaining bedclothes were piled haphazardly on top, stained with blood. A glass that was normally placed neatly on her nightstand had been knocked to the floor. Despite these concerning signs, there was not enough blood present to indicate a fatal injury. The rest of Barrick's home painted a troubling picture. Her dentures were soaking in their container in the bathroom, and a burned-out cigarette lay abandoned on a shelf. Her Pomeranian, which she adored and rarely left unattended, was found locked in its crate. The kitchen trash, which she always took out at night, remained on the counter. Strangely, while her fitted sheet was missing, the only other item authorities could determine to be absent from the home was Barrick's small clutch purse. The $400 in cash she routinely kept in her freezer was untouched. Her truck sat parked outside with the house keys still inside, while the truck keys remained indoors. This detail suggested she had been interrupted during her nighttime routine, likely by someone she knew. Investigators found another significant clue outside the home. The fake rock where Barrick normally hid a spare house key was empty. This could have indicated that someone familiar with her habits had taken it and gained entry without forcing the door. Orla Barrick had been widowed for several years and lived alone. She was known for her love of gardening, fishing, and sewing. Her family described her as a fiercely independent woman who was set in her ways and took great pride in her self-sufficiency. However, they also revealed that she had been dating a younger man in the months leading up to her disappearance. Though they were uncertain of his name, they were aware that she had spoken fondly of him, even if she had kept details of their relationship somewhat private. A key detail stood out to Barrick's family. She had taken out her dentures before she vanished. To them, this was an indication that she was not expecting company that evening. She never let anyone see her without her dentures, even close family members. This suggested that whoever confronted her in her home that night was not a stranger, but someone she knew and perhaps trusted enough to let inside without hesitation. Suspicion soon fell upon a local handyman whom Barrick had recently hired for home repairs. He had been seen around her property in the weeks before her disappearance, and his abrupt departure from the area shortly after she went missing raised eyebrows. Authorities, however, have never publicly confirmed his status as a suspect. What they have stated is that they do believe Barrick met with foul play and that the person responsible likely had personal knowledge of her home and routines. Barrick's case has remained a mystery for nearly 3 decades. Authorities suspect she was murdered and that her remains may be buried in the remote woodlands surrounding her home. Despite extensive searches, including the use of cadaver dogs and ground-penetrating radar, no trace of her body has ever been found. If you have any information about the disappearance of Orla Barrick, please contact the Kentucky State Police or your local authorities. The afternoon sun cast long shadows on Route 18 in Weymouth, Massachusetts, as Deborah Mello sat in the passenger seat of her husband's car. The summer air was thick, but inside the car, the tension was even heavier. Luis Mello, her husband of 14 years, gripped the steering wheel tightly as their argument escalated. They had fought before, many times in fact, but something about today felt different. "I can't do this anymore," Deborah finally said, her voice trembling. She had been contemplating divorce for months, but saying the words aloud made them real. Luis's face darkened, his knuckles whitening against the wheel. She saw it, that flicker of anger in his eyes that she had come to fear. The same anger that had chased her with a curtain rod years ago, the same anger that had prompted her to file a restraining order against him in 1996, only to withdraw it weeks later. Luis suddenly pulled the car over. The highway stretched endlessly ahead, cars whizzing past without a second glance. Deborah hesitated, but she knew she couldn't stay in that car another minute. Without a purse, without her phone, without the skincare product she had just purchased at her dermatologist's office, she stepped onto the shoulder of Route 18. The heat radiated off the pavement as she turned to face her husband one last time. He didn't beg her to get back in. He didn't even look at her. He simply pulled away, the sound of his tires fading into the hum of distant traffic. Deborah stood there, exhaling shakily. She knew her way around the area, but she hadn't thought beyond this moment. A few minutes passed, then a few more. She watched cars speed by, hoping one might slow down, that someone might recognize her and offer a ride. But no one did. 20 minutes later, Luis returned. He slowed the car, scanning the roadside. But Deborah was gone. Luis didn't report Deborah missing immediately. Not that day. Not even the next. Some accounts say he waited a full 3 days before going to the police. When he did, his story was simple. She had left the car during an argument, and when he came back, she was no longer there. No, she hadn't taken her phone or wallet. No, he hadn't gone looking for her beyond that brief return to Route 18. Deborah's family was devastated and suspicious. They had seen the cracks in her marriage, the bruises on her spirit, the way she had confided in them about wanting to leave Luis for good. She had told her brother-in-law that she planned to ask for the house and full custody of the children in the divorce, that she was finally ready to break free. And then, suddenly, she was gone. Her disappearance sparked a frantic search. Police scoured the roadside where Luis claimed to have last seen her. No one recalled seeing a woman walking alone that afternoon. No one reported picking her up. Her face appeared on missing person flyers, local news segments, and eventually, national databases. But there were no leads, no signs of struggle, no body. Luis, despite being the last person to see her, did little to help. He refused to join search efforts. He didn't speak to the media. He failed a lie detector test, but maintained his innocence, telling authorities he believed Deborah was still alive somewhere. If that were true, why didn't he seem interested in finding her? Years passed, and while her family never stopped looking, the case remained frustratingly stagnant. Rumors swirled. Some speculated that Luis had disposed of Deborah somewhere in Taunton, where his phone had mysteriously pinged the evening she disappeared, miles away from Weymouth. Others whispered about a possible connection to the Dunkin' Donuts shop they both managed. Had something happened to Deborah there, in the early morning hours when no one was watching? Police investigated, even going so far as to dig up a backyard in 2017, but found nothing. Luis moved on. He remarried. Life continued for him, but for Deborah's family, time stood still. Her children, now grown, have remained largely silent about their mother's disappearance, perhaps out of loyalty or fear, or simply the exhaustion of carrying unanswered questions for so many years. But Deborah's sister, Patty, has never given up. She continues to push for answers, to keep Deborah's name alive in the public eye, to remind the world that a woman doesn't simply vanish into thin air. More than 2 decades have passed since that hot June afternoon. Deborah's face has aged only in the grainy photos that remain. She was 30 when she disappeared, with brown hair, blue eyes, and a tattoo of a rose with the name Louie on her shoulder, a painful irony now. If she were still alive, she would be in her mid-50s. But her family doesn't believe she's alive. Not anymore. They believe someone who once claimed to love her, took that future from her. But until her body is found, or someone steps forward with the truth, her case remains open. On March 3, 1993, Patricia Calloway, a nursing assistant at the professional care home in Hartford, Kentucky, left work in a hurry after receiving distressing news. Her former brother-in-law, Vernon Eugene Calloway, had come to visit her that morning and told her that her ex-husband, Larry Ray Calloway, had filed for a marriage license with his new girlfriend. Although Patricia and Larry had been divorced for a year, they were still living together, and the revelation shook her deeply. Patricia immediately went to her boss, visibly upset, and explained that she had to leave early due to a family emergency. She left the nursing home at 10:30 a.m., 3 hours before her shift was scheduled to end. That was the last time anyone saw Patricia alive. By 5 p.m. that same day, her car was discovered abandoned in the side lot of the Hartford Community Center, raising alarm bells for her family. Yet, Patricia was not officially reported missing until March 13th. Initially, authorities considered the possibility that Patricia had left voluntarily, but as they dug deeper in her case, they began to suspect foul play. Investigators learned that Patricia may have been blackmailing Larry at the time of her disappearance, threatening to implicate him in a 1991 arson case. That case involved the burning of Larry's home for insurance money, a crime that would later have significant legal consequences for him and his brother Vernon. Patricia was last seen in Vernon's 1978 Chevrolet Blazer on the day she vanished. Reports surfaced that Vernon had previously threatened to cut her throat. Despite these suspicions, Patricia's case remained unsolved for nearly 2 decades. Years after Patricia's disappearance, authorities finally brought charges against Larry and Vernon for their involvement in the 1991 arson case. In 1995, Larry pleaded guilty, admitting he had paid Vernon $1,000 to burn down his house. Vernon, however, was acquitted at trial. By then, Patricia was long gone, and many suspected that knowledge of the arson case had cost her life. Patricia left behind 3 adult children and several grandchildren. She had not taken any clothing or significant amounts of money when she vanished. More tellingly, she never picked up her last paycheck or accessed her bank account after that fateful day. Her family eventually held a memorial service for her in March 2000, and she was declared legally dead in December 2001. Then, in October 2012, nearly a decade after Patricia's disappearance, a stunning breakthrough came. Vernon and his wife, Deborah Angeline Calloway, were charged with Patricia's murder. Both denied any involvement, insisting that Patricia had simply left town after learning of her ex-husband's impending marriage. However, the evidence suggested otherwise. Tragically, before he could stand trial, Vernon died of natural causes in July 2013. Shortly before his death, his sister claimed he had confessed to killing Patricia. Despite this revelation, the case against Deborah proceeded. During Deborah's 2014 trial, several family members testified against her. Larry admitted that Patricia had been present when he and Vernon conspired to commit the arson. More damning was the testimony of another of Larry's brothers, James Calloway. James stated that he had seen Vernon and Deborah cleaning out Vernon's truck shortly after Patricia's disappearance. In the back of the vehicle, something was covered in trash bags. When James pulled them away, he saw Patricia's body. Her throat had been cut. James did not come forward with this information until 2008, more than a decade after Patricia's disappearance. His delay in reporting the crime raised questions, but his account was critical in securing a conviction. Ultimately, the jury found Deborah guilty of facilitation to commit murder, facilitation to retaliate against a witness in a legal proceeding, and evidence tampering. She was sentenced to 10 years in prison. Despite the convictions, Patricia Calloway's body has never been found.